That is bright. Did you know that over 50% of all job opportunities out there are never posted to the public and they're never advertised? What that means is that if you go and do a Google search or you're looking for all the companies out there with different job opportunities and openings, you're going to miss the majority of them. That's an interesting statistic, but what's even more interesting is that why this is taking place. And the reason is because the hiring manager wants a referral from a trusted friend or a trusted acquaintance. And that's where they want to do their hiring. I wish I had known this earlier, but 12 years ago, I was finishing up my junior year, starting up my senior year here at BYU-Idaho. And I had just discovered my fascination and passion in markets and investing. And when I took that to an extreme, it was New York City, Wall Street. And I set my sights there and said, that's where I want to go, and this is my passion, and this is where I want to take my career. So I started asking everybody I knew, how do you do this? And do you have any leads to help me get there? And as I asked everyone, the only recurring theme I kept hearing over and over was, you were crazy. And probably fortunate for me, I was too stupid and naive to realize how crazy I really was. But what was interesting, and I guess the reason I realized that I'm crazy is because Wall Street tends to hire a select pool of individuals from Ivy League schools. And these people were more impressive than me in every respect. They had experience relevant to the industry. They had done internships. They had a resume much more polished and sharper than mine. And honestly, they had a much larger pedigree too. And I knew that there was no way I could compete with these guys head to head. I knew that the only way I was actually going to be able to compete was to do so unconventionally. And so I found a backdoor way to get into the industry through this concept of networking. And I want you to put aside anything that you kind of previously know or think you know about networking. Put that aside, and I want to talk about a new definition, something that's very different, that's going to take us BYU-Idaho students and give us a competitive advantage to break into the industries and the areas of passion that we have. So, what I'd like to do is take you back in time through that journey and talk about the process, which at that time was an impossible endeavor. So once I asked everybody for any leads, I didn't come up with a single lead except one. It was Professor Josh Holt, who came to me and said, you're not crazy, go after it. And by the way, here's one individual I know. Reach out to him and let him know that I recommended you. So I crafted a nice professional email, the best I could, and I fired it out, and I got 15 minutes of his time. Well, what was interesting is I was naive, and I thought I was going to get on this call and talk to him, and he was going to show me or refer me to some job opportunities. I thought that's what networking was. You reach out to someone, you tell them what you want, and they find you a job. That was dumb. And so we got on the call, and his first question was, so what is it that you want to do? And I didn't know that there's several dozen different entry-level roles in investment banking. And each one has its own unique requirements, its own responsibilities, its different skill sets that are required, and I had no idea. So I quickly turned this into an opportunity to ask questions and learn from him. And he started teaching me different things. And he taught me a little bit about how the bank is divided and the different units in the bank. And what was initially a very abstract industry and sort of profession started to take shape and make sense. And I got done with this, and I thanked him graciously. And asked him, after I'd had a chance to digest this and read the material he had given me, if he minded if I reached out in a week or two with some follow-up questions, and he agreed to do that. So I went back and started doing my homework. And there's these books called the Vault Guidebooks. There's one on every single industry and on every major company. And they're little pamphlets, they're not books. And I went and read this, and I got up to speed, and I started doing research online, and more questions started coming to me. So I wrote down all my questions, and I got back on the phone with him again, and this time he could tell that the depth of my questions was so much more profound. And he kind of was getting more interested, and then I started asking him questions in areas that he wasn't such an expert in, and he said, I've got a couple friends who can help you in that area. Why don't you talk to them? So he gave me a couple contacts. And in the meantime, I got another contact from my own little personal network. So now I had 4 contacts, and I was excited. And I started calling these people up and conducting these informational interviews to learn more and more. Well, the more I talked to them, the more questions kept coming up and in my mind. And I found that the questions largely fell into 3 groups. And I found that you needed to become an expert in all 3 of these areas before you would be a legitimate candidate to go in there to an interview and market yourself. At the highest level, it's understanding the industry. Who are the major players? How are they competing? How do they differentiate themselves? Who are the suppliers to this industry, whether it's raw materials or information or services or whatever it is? And then who are the customers to this industry? And specifically, what major need are you solving for those customers, and how do the different companies do it, better or worse, or how do they distinguish themselves? After that, the next level of questions was more at the organizational level. So this is understanding, for me, for example, how does the bank divide itself, and what do they specialize in, and getting everything I could about the organization. And then at the lowest level was the role-specific questions. What does a day in the life look like? What kind of unique skills are they looking for this particular role? And understanding all those things to set yourself up for success in the interview. So I went through and started making sure that I covered my grounds in these 3 areas with these 4 contacts. Well, what was interesting is that as I learned, I was finding that there is about 30 hours of content of information that has to be downloaded to you about an industry before you really become an expert. And this is stuff that's independent of all the stuff you're going to get online. And doing short 30-minute informational interviews, you get closer and closer and closer to hitting that status of expert. So every day around noon, or I had a kind of an early afternoon class in the Hinckley building, I would beat it downstairs in the basement. There was always this empty classroom, and I would close the door, and I would spend 3 hours every single day doing my own personal networking. I was sending emails to the contacts, thank you emails, conducting on the phone, and various different things as I was kind of trying to set the stage. And what was interesting is that over the next 3 months, I took my 4 contacts and I exploded that closer to 50 different people that I was all trying to manage and contact and learn from. And I also found out that by the end of October, which is about where I was the very drop-dead hiring date for full-time offers the next year. And I was a senior at this point, so I was at the very end of when it was going to be too late. So I started asking my contacts, look, I get it. I'm so prepared. I really feel like I understand this. I know I fit in this industry. What do I need to do to break in? And their comments were, you need to get out here and talk to people face to face. So I was petrified. And you just got to imagine for a second, put yourself in my shoes where you're saying, go out and talk to these type A, red, power-hungry executives on Wall Street, and I'm a BYU-Idaho, pretty inexperienced individual, and I knew that I was going against Ivy League students. So it was very intimidating, but before I could get myself worked up, I just bought a ticket. And I bought a ticket, and I went out there for 4 days, and I had to miss classes and everything. And I got there late Saturday and woke up early Sunday and got to church before anybody else. And as people started coming in, I went to the elders and said, hey, can you point to me everybody here that works on Wall Street? And the elders said, well, there's a guy over there. Why don't you go talk to him? And they pointed a few of them. I said, why don't you make the introduction? So the others came up and said, hey, here's a student from BYU-Idaho. And I said, hi, I'm Christopher, and I'm in my senior year. I've flown out here because I'm trying to learn as much as I can about the industry, and I'm trying to break in. I'm going to be here Monday or Tuesday. Do you have 15 minutes I could come to your office and talk to you, learn more about what you do, and just pick your brain? And he accepted. And I said, well, thank you, but I want to make the most of my time while I'm here. Do you know anybody else around here I should be talking to? And he said, yeah, go talk to Brent over there. Thank you, I will. So I go to Brent and say, Brent, John recommended and said I had to come talk to you. My name is Christopher, and I'm a student from BYU-Idaho, and I went through the spiel again. I got a couple of those in before church started. Then between the first and second block, I hit a few more people. And second, third, I hit a few more people. And then church was done, and I had a few contacts I was going to go visit. And then the next ward started coming in, and I thought, I need more spiritual edification. I'm sticking around. So I did it again for another 3 hours. So my whole Sunday was basically networking and talking to people and getting myself ready and getting very spiritually edified. So after this, essentially, I started on Monday. And I had also set up some contacts before I got out there. I had sent out lots of emails and tell everybody I was coming out. And from Monday morning until Wednesday night, I was in a taxi zipping up and down Manhattan from JP Morgan and ripping up there to Credit Suisse and then over to Lehman Brothers and back down to Goldman Sachs, filling up and having these informational interviews with people. And also, what little pockets of time I had, they were being filled up with people saying, hey, while you're here, you got to go talk to someone on the trading floor. And so I was booked with not a single minute to spare, and even generated a few actual interviews where people were hiring for different roles. Well, what was interesting is that I was just barely hand to mouth, keeping ahead of myself, learning as I was going, and I had no idea how to actually interview, so I didn't know how to market myself. So what interviews I did get, nothing was coming from them. So I reached the end of Wednesday evening, and I was inspired. I had confidence. I had learned so much, but I didn't have a job, and the time was up. And there was one thing I learned that was so important, and you got to take note of this. When you go to do an interview for a job, there is no such thing as an interview. It's a series of interviews. And the first of those series is something we call the screener interview. And the screener is not like a traditional one that you and I think about. It's one where they're looking, and it's a litmus test. Do I like this individual? Is this someone I could work with? And they try to get a sense of your passion and your interests. And so what I found was that when you go to somebody and you're with them face to face, either in their office or over lunch, you are essentially creating your own screener interview. This is a remarkable insight. What this means is that you don't have to place your resume and hope and wait that someone's going to ask you to interview. You can create your own interviews. You do this through these informational interviews, and when they're done, they've either said to themselves, I like this person, and if I know an opening, I'm going to refer this person. Or they're not going to say that, but you got to pass that litmus test. So I had done a whole bunch of screener interviews that might as well have been first-round interviews, but I didn't get a job from this. So I went back, and I didn't know whether I should be discouraged or what to think, but I said to myself, you know what? Going back that statistic, there's got to be a job out there that's simply not being published, that's not being made aware to the public. And I don't know where it is, but I've got to go find it. And before I could psych myself out and get all nervous, I just bought another ticket for right after Thanksgiving. And then for the next 4 weeks, I knew I needed to learn how to interview. So I found someone in my network that knew how, and he was a mentor for me and taught me some things, and then I just started practice. Well, on weekends, when I would normally be going on a date with my girlfriend, she acquiesced, and we turned these into mock interviews. So we would go to the library, close ourselves, and she would drill me on interviews. She is a keeper. In fact, if nothing else came from it, I married the girl. So I got ready, I was prepared, and I flew back out again. Only this time I thought I knew what I was doing. I did the same thing on Sunday. Monday came around, and I went to my first interview. But it wasn't an interview. It was a guy who I'd met the last time who said, hey, next time you're here, let me know, and let's meet again if you ever come out. So I had sent him an email beforehand and said, I'm coming out again, let's meet. So I went there, and sure enough, to my surprise, and I was very happy about this, but I clearly passed the litmus test because he said, there's somebody hiring, I want you to go talk to them. So he marches me over to a group that's hiring, and I interviewed, and it was the first time doing it live after my practice, so it went decent but not great. And when I got done, he said, are you done? Yep, there's someone else I want you to talk to. There's another group that's hiring. So he marched me over to another group, and I interviewed with them. And it went better, but not fantastic. And I got done, and he said, there's another group I want you to hire or interview with. Great, let's do it. So he took me to somebody else, and I went in there, and the guy started asking me questions, and he was playing hardball from the beginning. And Wall Street interviews are very challenging and tough. And for some reason, things just started clicking. And I definitely felt help from above. And it just felt like I started knocking these questions out of the ballpark. And one after the other, I felt so prepared because of all those interviews and that information I'd taken and digested. And this guy couldn't stump me, and I was selling myself hard. And I could see he started sitting back in his chair, and he started getting this smile on his face. The corner of his lips were curling up, and I could tell it was doing good because he was intrigued. And at the end of this, we get done, and he says, hang tight, I want you to talk to someone else. So we bring someone else in the room, and this individual then goes to interview me for an hour. Again, very difficult questions, and I felt like everything was just dynamite. And when he got done, he said, there's someone else I want you to talk to. And then another one, and another one, and another one. And for 5 hours, I sat in this chair and interviewed with no lunch and no break. And when they got done, they said, thank you very much. We got to talk, and we'll get back to you shortly. And I left. The next day was Morgan Stanley. And I got to Morgan Stanley, and I didn't know if it was going to be an interview or what, but somebody brought me in, and we started talking. And they brought in another person, and 3.5 hours, they finally let me go. And that went really well as well. And then the next day I was up at JP Morgan, and so I was doing all these interviews, and it just felt like the blessings were coming and things were coming together, and I was so excited about this. And Wednesday night came, and what was interesting was that, I'll just tell you as a side note, I quickly found that Wall Street is driven by greed. And so I used this against them. And anytime somebody would say, so are you talking to anyone else while you're here? I'd say, oh yeah, I was at Credit Suisse for 5 hours, and I went and talked to Morgan Stanley for 3.5 hours, and I got a couple other interviews, and you could just see the value of your stock like shooting up. And then of course they said, well, hold on, we want to talk to you too. We've got some great opportunities. And before I knew it, they started selling me on the bank, and I thought, oh, this is a good position to be in. So Wednesday, I am flying back to Salt Lake City. It's late in the evening, and I have no idea what's going to happen. And I know at this point, I really am out of time. And I get on the shuttle, and I'm booking it back to Rexburg, Idaho. And 15 minutes outside, I get a phone call. And I pick it up. Hello? Hi, this is the gang from Credit Suisse. We've talked. We really like your grasp of the industry, your knowledge, and how you're going to fit in our organization, and we want you to come join us next spring. And I couldn't tell you the feeling of just triumph, of like, holy cow, this was supposed to be impossible. What just happened? And I sat there kind of speechless. Hello? Yeah, I'm here. This is great. I'll get back to you. Thank you so much. And in the next few days, I got a call from Morgan Stanley. We'd like to offer you a position. And soon thereafter, Goldman Sachs calls me up and says, don't take those offers. We got a couple roles that are really good fits. Come talk to us. So in the end, I ended up taking the role with Credit Suisse, and I was really excited about this. And the next 4 years were just an amazing experience. For 2 years, I was doing investment banking, so we were advising large corporations, and they were doing big acquisitions and raising money. And then I said to myself, I want to try trading. I want to get on the trading floor. So I used these same skills, learned as much as I could, was referred to an opportunity there, and before I knew it, I found myself on the trading floor with people screaming at me trying to figure out what's going on. I did that in London for a few years, came back to New York City, and really, really enjoyed it. Felt like that jump-started my career. Then I said to myself, I want to shift gears. I want to go in the corporate setting. I want to go work in a place where I can work with groups of people and create value and work in teams, but I need leadership training. Where am I going to get that? And for me, I decided that the best training was going to be at Harvard. But it wasn't because of the flashy name. I wasn't interested in that. It was genuinely because I wanted what they had that they could bring me. So I started asking people, how is this done? And the one thing everybody kept telling me was, oh, you're crazy. The best of the best don't get in here. It's a crapshoot. Don't worry about it. And I'm thinking to myself, crazy, underdog, impossible. Wow, this sounds really familiar. So that just started fueling my passion. Oh, keep telling me more. Why is this so impossible? This is exciting. And so I found a couple students that were currently there, started the process. Over the course of the next month, I had about 15 different people I was talking to. I learned about the application process, the essays, how to prepare the recommendations. And I packaged an application. I spent hours, got ready for the interview. They told me all about that, and I put forth the very best effort I could. And when I got in that interview, I was so prepared that it went amazing, and then I was accepted, and it was just like, wow, this process is working. There's something to this weird informational interview networking process that I've learned that is actually working. And after that, I joined the company I'm currently at. It's in the packaging industry. I joined it for kind of interesting reasons, but I love it here. And I've been in 5 different roles over the last 5 years, and every single role has been through this process. Never once have I gone and looked at the job board and put together my resume and tried to get through the front door. I've always gone through the back door. What does this mean for you? What I'm trying to say is this. You can go get your dream job and chase your passion if you learn how to do it properly. Networking is not what most of us think it is. If you go and you Google it and you try to figure out and you look at the definition, it's going to say something along the lines of leveraging your personal and business contacts to create a steady stream of job opportunities. Okay, that's great if I'm an executive and I've got this big extensive network over decades and I leverage them when I want a job opportunity. That's what I think of as more of the farming approach to networking. But for you and me, it's different. We need the hunting approach. We need to be able to generate contacts quickly that we've never met before in a new industry, and we need to find a way to break in that way. And so this is how I like to think of networking as the hunting approach, is this. Networking is using informational interviews to gain knowledge and expertise and identify opportunities that you can be referred to. I want to repeat that one more time. Networking is using informational interviews to gain knowledge and to be referred to opportunities. Now, many of you students are going to get excited and get out there and run out and doing it, and that's exactly what I would encourage you to do. However, after mentoring several dozen students, I've seen a lot of the same common mistakes and pitfalls. And so I have some quick best practices that I'm going to rip through quickly, but I'm going to post it online. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this, but I'll post it there so you can get it later. But just know this, the idea here is I want to make sure you don't sink the ship even before you've left the dock. So let's go through these very quickly. First, don't make the same mistake I did. When you get on that first call, at least have done your basic homework and understanding everything that you could get online and everything that you can kind of glean from the internet. Second, professionals are busy. When they get that first email from you, they acknowledge it. They might even be interested, but they set it aside for when they have more time. And you've always got to send a follow-up email because they forget. I always expect to send 2 emails when I send them out, and when I receive them, I always forget about the first one. Third, these are the major elements that when you send out that email, when you're trying to set up the informational interview. The only thing I want to talk about is the second one. What are you trying to achieve? You can't ask for a job. You don't get on the phone and ask for it. So what are you trying to achieve? What you're trying to do is set up time to learn about how to break into the industry or learn about the organization or whatever it is. But just know what it is that you're trying to achieve when you send out that email. Fourth, this goes without saying. However, and this will sink your ship faster than anything else. One thing I like to do is I like to get my wife or somebody to quickly read my email before I send it out, just to make sure that what I'm communicating is what's actually being received. And more often than not, she'll find a sentence, hey, you might consider rephrasing this. It's not coming across the way you think. 5, these are the objectives of informational interviews. And what's interesting is as the relationship develops, you're going to migrate from the first one to the second one to the third one. There's a natural progression. So at first, it's to gain knowledge. Then you start moving to trying to get more contacts. And only then can you start talking about opportunities and asking them if they're aware of any of those and maybe how is the best way for you to apply to those. And the idea that you hope is that they'll refer you into those. You're never calling people just once. So you need to make sure that you don't wear out your welcome. Keep your informational interviews to 30 minutes or less. And even when they're saying, no, I got more time, let's keep talking. Nope, I'd love to continue discussion another time, but I want to be respectful of your time. You always need to have these 2 answers thoroughly thought out in your mind. And because you're always going to get these questions, don't wait to get them. Just start the discussion with this and let them know, to tell them about your background and lead it up in a logical sort of way that kind of ties and connects to why you're interested in what you are. And that's how I start every informational interview when I'm talking for the first time. You kind of want to break the ice when you're having subsequent emails after the first one. And so you're looking for little chit-chat points, whether they're sports and they've brought up something that they're interested in there, or they went on a business trip. And so I'm always looking for little points that I can use on subsequent emails to kind of break the ice first before I get into the meat of the email. We covered this. Face-to-face interviews are screener interviews. It's a beautiful insight. The very best way to break into an industry is through internships, and the reason is because the cost of them to getting a wrong hire is too expensive, and they can't take that risk. So internships allow them to sample you, to try you out, so they don't make the mistake in getting someone that they don't want. I was the exception. I got in there without an internship, but that generally doesn't happen, so don't plan on that. So think of this as the best way to get an internship that's way above anything that you feel that you're capable of, but an internship is a way to de-risk yourself. After every single conversation, you've got to fire one of these away immediately. You don't want people to feel like every time you come to them, it's because you will have a favor. So, as I'm hitting major milestones in my process, I keep my network updated. Everyone that I've been having these informational interviews with, and I let them know how progress is going, and they like that, and they start to feel like it's a mentorship, that they're helping me, and they become interested in the outcome. That's a good situation to be in. You do not have to know your passion before you start networking. So let me be clear on this. Freshmen, a lot of you have no idea what you want to do. That's precisely why you're going to start informational interviews. For you, it's going to be about, hey, this is an area that might be interesting. Let me see if I can start talking to people and find out if this is where my passion is. Sophomores and juniors, you're starting to confirm your interests. You're starting to really solidify that, and you're setting yourself up for the internship now. And seniors, you've already had an internship, and you're doing it now to land the full-time job. Last is this. If you place your resume and you give it to somebody, and you've worked hours on it, and you know it's a great resume, and you put it in their hands, you've essentially taken your destiny and put it in somebody else's hands. And you're hoping that this turns into a job interview, and hope is not a good strategy. So what my advice here is, put your destiny in your own hands and go create your own interview. A face-to-face interview is the screener interview, and you've got to go through the screener before you get to the second round. You have two paths you can take right now. The first path is this. You wait till you're a senior and you got 2 to 3 months left before it's all over, and you're just starting the process, and you realize that there's not near enough time, and you're out of time, and debt bills are coming, and you got to provide for a family, and so you settle on a job. And you take this job, and it pays the bills, and you punch in and punch out, but it's far from being your passion. And after 10 years, you pay your dues, and you start doing something you do kind of like. That's one path. There's a second path. You start early. You put forth the effort and initiative. You start doing these, you develop the skill set, and you go after your passion. And if you pay the price, and if you do it right, I know you can get it. This is not a story about getting a job on Wall Street. This is not a story about getting a job in business. This is about using these skills in the church. It's about if you want to become a high school teacher and that's your passion, or you're in a psychology major or a history major, or you're a nurse and you're saying, I want to go work at this hospital. And you use this to learn about that hospital and to learn about the different opportunities and the different areas within the hospital that you might practice. These are skills that you will use for the rest of your life. And I started at one point realizing that I was at a major disadvantage from my Ivy League peers. And what I found was that BYU-Idaho equipped me with the ability to learn how to do this, and they turned it into a competitive advantage. And it served me over and over. Let's go back to President Eyring's promise to us that we would become innovative, resourceful, taking initiative. And remember this, we would do more with less. Not just less resources, less pedigree, a lesser resume, less experience. We would do more with less. This is in our DNA. This is who we are as BYU-Idaho students. So, what I would say is this. You might look at me and say, oh, everything just came together. That's amazing. I don't know how to do that. I've simplified my story. I made tons of mistakes along the way. There was tons of heartache, and I kept praying, and I had faith that if I did my best, and I kept asking for help, that God would help me. And in the time, I wasn't seeing any of the help. I felt like I was doing it on my own and I was stumbling. But once it was all done and I was looking back in hindsight, it was so obvious how His hand was playing a major role for me. So please go out there and chase your passions and get going and make a difference in this world, because this is why we're here at this school, and this is why we're here to get trained, to go out there and make a difference. Thank you so much for letting me come talk to you today.